We are the guest editors of a special issue of the Journal of European Public Policy on fiascos in public policy and foreign policy, which will be out in 2016. And the purpose of this short video is just to give you an overview of the aims and findings of that collection. My name is Karl Pommermann and I'm at the University of Sussex.
And I'm Alex Spencer at the University of Munich. As you all know, we make mistakes every day. We commit blunders, witness disastrous fiascos, and this is true not only for our personal lives, and probably this video, but for public and foreign policy. Now, examples include the poll tax initiative, or the attempt to introduce identity cards in the UK, as well as the 1980s Iran hostage rescue mission or the Iraq war in 2003. Mistakes and fiascos are what we as political scientists are primarily interested in. Now, the aim of the special issue is twofold. Firstly, we want to reflect and develop the state-of-the-art of studying policy fiascos. The issue therefore takes stock of the progress which has been made in the research and identifies boundaries of the current knowledge about policy fiascos. As there is currently renewed interest in policy fiascos visible through increasing number of panels, conferences and some publications, we believe it to be important to ensure that future research builds on and adds to existing knowledge in order to maximize the potential. Therefore, the issue brings together the most recent findings of leading experts in the field and identifies the most significant gaps in the current state-of-the-art and points to fruitful avenues for further research. Specifically, this includes questions of how to define, identify and measure policy failure, the social and political contestation about what is considered a fiasco, the causes and consequences of policy failure, the attribution of blame, as well as the process of learning from fiascos. Now, the second aim of the special issue is to explore the potential of bridging the divide between research in public policy and foreign policy fiascos by bringing two literatures together which have so far talked very little to each other. And now, giving the largely very similar questions and research objectives of the two literatures, understanding policy fiascos and their causes and consequences, the lack of exchange is indeed quite surprising, and we consider that actually a mistake. Kai will now briefly talk about some of the key findings of the issue.
Okay, so we think that there are actually three broader themes coming out of our special issue that are perhaps worth mentioning in this video. First, the collection of articles clearly suggests that fiascos in public policy and foreign policy should not be studied as distinct categories. Rather, future research, we believe, should acknowledge the many similarities between fiascos in public policy and fiascos in foreign policy, and should bring together insights from both fields of study on the causes and consequences of policy fiasco, with the aim of developing middle-range theory on policy fiascos, which we believe would benefit scholarship in both traditions. So, for example, for scholarship in public policy, the implication of our volume is that it should focus more, put more attention to international and transnational causes and sources of policy fiasco. And for scholarship in foreign policy, I think this scholarship would benefit, for example, from paying more attention to why foreign policy decisions may fail politically in the domestic arena. Now, the second broad theme of our collection relates to the role of structure and agency in studying policy fiascos. On the one hand, there's general agreement that fiascos involve agency of individual or collective actors. Foreign and public policies that have gone wrong are more likely to be discussed as fiascos if they could have been avoided and if blame can be attributed to responsible decision makers. But on the other hand, a number of our contributions remind us that focusing explanation solely on policy failures of decision makers risks masking broader structural contexts which may systematically provoke such failures in the first place. And the third point worth noting perhaps relates to the distinction in the field between an objectivist tradition in studying fiascos, which understands fiascos as objective and observable facts, and an intersubjectivist tradition which sees fiascos as being constructed in political discourse. And the overall sense you get from our collection, we believe, is that these differences can be easily overstated. In particular, these differences appear to be less about ontology, but to reflect primarily differences in research questions and methodology. So, for example, the objectivist tradition tends to agree that the benchmarks or criteria they suggest to evaluate policies always require some sort of interpretation, and on the other hand, similarly, even contributions that clearly employ post-positivist methods do not tend to go as far as to suggest that policy fiascos are completely in the eye of the beholder, but they tend to acknowledge that policies will more likely be constructed into fiascos if they can plausibly be linked to widely shared indicators for policy failure. Now, this is just a broad overview of the key findings of our collection. Of course, there's much more in our volume than we can cover in this short video, but perhaps it was still useful to give you some sense of what we have covered and why we think that bringing public policy and foreign policy research on policy fiascos together is indeed very promising. So we hope you find the special issue as interesting as we do, and please feel free to drop us a line with any comments or feedback you may have. And if you think that the whole thing was a complete fiasco, then just blame the editors. Thank you.
Especially Kai.
Oh, see you.